Mughal painting is a South Asian style of painting on paper made into miniatures either as book illustrations or as single works to be kept in albums, muratka, originating from the territory of the Mughal Empire in the Indian subcontinent. It emerged from Persian miniature painting, itself partly of Chinese origin, and developed in the court of the Mughal Empire of the 16th to 18th centuries. Battles, legendary stories, hunting scenes, wildlife, royal life, mythology, as well as other subjects have all been frequently depicted in paintings. The Mughal emperors were Muslims, and they are credited with consolidating Islam in the subcontinent and spreading Muslim and particularly Persian arts and culture as well as the faith. Mughal painting immediately took a much greater interest in realistic portraiture than was typical of Persian miniatures. Animals and plants were the main subject of many miniatures for albums and were more realistically depicted. Although many classic works of Persian literature continued to be illustrated, as well as Indian literature, the taste of the Mughal emperors for writing memoirs or diaries, begun by Babur, provided some of the most lavishly decorated texts, such as the Padshah Nama genre of official histories. Subjects are rich in variety and include portraits, events, and scenes from court life, wildlife, and hunting scenes, and illustrations of battles. The Persian tradition of richly decorated borders framing the central image, mostly trimmed in the images shown here, was continued, as was a modified form of the Persian convention of an elevated viewpoint. The Mughal painting style later spread to other Indian courts, both Muslim and Hindu, and later Sikh, and was often used to depict Hindu subjects. This was mostly in northern India. It developed many regional styles in these courts, tending to become bolder but less refined. These are often described as post-Mughal, sub-Mughal, or provincial Mughal. Mughal style made a strong feature of realistic portraiture, normally in profile, and influenced by Western prints, which were available at the Mughal court. This had never been a feature of either Persian miniature or earlier Indian painting. The pose, rarely varied in portraits, was to have the head in strict profile, but the rest of the body half turned towards the viewer. For a long time, portraits were always of men, often accompanied by generalized female servants or concubines, but there is scholarly debate about the representation of female court members in portraiture. Some scholars claim there are no known extant likenesses of figures like Jahanara Begum and Mumtaz Mahal, and others attribute miniatures, for example, from the Dara Shikoh album or the Freer Gallery of Art mirror portrait to these famous noble women. From the 17th century, equestrian portraits, mostly of rulers, became another popular borrowing from the West. Another new type of image showed the Jharokha Darshan, or public display of the emperor to the court or the public, which became a daily ceremonial under Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan before being stopped as un-Islamic by Aurangzeb. In these scenes, the emperor is shown at top on a balcony or at a window with a crowd of courtiers below, sometimes including many portraits. Like the increasingly large halos these emperors were given in single portraits, the iconography reflects the aspiration of the later Mughals to project an image as the representative of Allah on earth, or even as having a quasi-divine status themselves. Other images show the enthroned emperor having meetings, receiving visitors, or in durbar, or formal council. These and royal portraits incorporated in hunting scenes became highly popular types in later Rajput painting and other post-Mughal styles. Another popular subject area was realistic studies of animals and plants, mostly flowers. The text of the Babarnama includes a number of descriptions of such subjects which were illustrated in the copies made for Akbar. These subjects also had specialist artists, including Ustad Mansoor. Milo C. Beach argues that Mughal naturalism has been greatly overstressed. Early animal imagery consists of variations on a theme rather than new, innovative observations. He sees considerable borrowings from Chinese animal paintings on paper, which seem to not have been highly valued by Chinese collectors and so reached India. Illustrated books. In the formative period of the style, under Akbar, the Imperial Workshop produced a number of heavily illustrated copies of established books in Persian. One of the first ones, probably from the 1550s and now mostly in the Cleveland Museum of Art, was a Tuttinama with some 250 rather simple and rather small miniatures, most with only a few figures. In contrast, Akbar's Hamzanama had unusually large pages, of densely woven cotton rather than the usual paper, and the images were very often crowded with figures. The work was a continuous series of romantic interludes, threatening events, narrow escapes and violent acts, supposedly telling the life of an uncle of Muhammad. Akbar's manuscript had a remarkable total of some 1400 miniatures, one on every opening, with the relevant text written on the back of the page, presumably to be read to the emperor as he looked at each image. This colossal project took most of the 1560s and probably beyond. These and a few other early works saw a fairly unified Mughal workshop style emerge by around 1580. Other large projects included biographies or memoirs of the Mughal dynasty. Babur, its founder, had written a memoir in Chagatai Turkic, which his grandson Akbar had translated to Persian as the Babarnama in 1589 and then produced in 4 lavishly illustrated copies with up to 183 miniatures each. The Akbarnama was Akbar's own commissioned biography or chronicle, produced in many versions, and the tradition continued with Jahangir's autobiography, Tuske-Jahangiri or Jahangirnama, and a celebratory biography of Shah Jahan called the Padshah-Nama, which brought the era of the large illustrated imperial biography to an end around 1650. Akbar commissioned a copy of Zafarnama, a biography of his distant ancestor Timur. But though he had his aunt Gulbadan Begum write an account of his father Humayun, titled Humayunama, no illustrated manuscript survives. Volumes of the classics of Persian poetry usually had rather fewer miniatures, often around 20, but these were often of the highest quality. Akbar also had the Hindu epic poems translated into Persian and produced in illustrated versions. 4 are known of the Rajmanama, a Mahabharata in Persian, from between 1585 and circa 1617. Akbar had at least one copy of the Persian version of the Ramayana, along with other works like the Bhagavat Purana, Harivamsa, and Panchatantra. Painting, as opposed to looser variants of the Mughal style produced in regional courts and cities, drew little from indigenous non-Muslim traditions of painting. These were Hindu and Jain, and earlier Buddhist, and almost entirely religious. They existed mainly in relatively small illustrations to texts, but also mural paintings and paintings in folk styles on cloth, in particular ones on scrolls made to be displayed by popular singers or reciters of the Hindu epics and other stories, performed by traveling specialists. Very few early examples of these last survive. A vivid Kashmiri tradition of mural paintings flourished between the 9th and 17th centuries, as seen in the murals of Alchi Monastery or Tsaparang. A number of Kashmiri painters were employed by Akbar, and some influence of their art can be seen in various Mughal works, such as the Hamzanama. In contrast, Mughal painting was almost entirely secular, although religious figures were sometimes portrayed. Realism, especially in portraits of both people and animals, became a key aim far more than in Persian painting, let alone the Indian traditions. There was already a Muslim tradition of miniature painting under the Sultanate of Delhi, which the Mughals overthrew, and like the Mughals and the very earliest of Central Asian rulers into the subcontinent, patronized foreign culture. These paintings were painted on loose-leaf paper and were usually placed between decorated wooden covers. Although the first surviving manuscripts are from Mandu in the years either side of 1500, there were very likely earlier ones which are either lost or perhaps now attributed to southern Persia, as later manuscripts can be hard to distinguish from these by style alone, and some remain the subject of debate among specialists. By the time of the Mughal invasion, the tradition had abandoned the high viewpoint typical of the Persian style and adopted a more realistic style for animals and plants. No miniatures survive from the reign of the founder of the dynasty, Babur, nor does he mention commissioning any in his memoirs, the Babarnama. Copies of this were illustrated by his descendants, Akbar in particular, with many portraits of the new animals Babur encountered when he came to India, which are carefully described. However, some surviving unillustrated manuscripts may have been commissioned by him, and he comments on the style of some famous past Persian masters. Some older illustrated manuscripts have his seal on them. The Mughals came from a long line stretching back to Timur and were fully assimilated into Persianate culture and expected to patronize literature and the arts. The style of the Mughal school developed within the royal atelier. Knowledge was primarily transmitted through familial and apprenticeship relationships and the system of joint manuscript production which brought multiple artists together for single works. In some cases, senior artists would draw the illustrations in outline and more junior ones would usually apply the colors, especially for background areas. When no artist names are inscribed, it is very difficult to trace imperial Mughal paintings back to specific artists. Development. After a tentative start under Humayun, the great period of Mughal painting was during the next three reigns of Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan, which covered just over a century between them. Humayun, 1530 to 1540 and 1555 to 1556. When the second Mughal Emperor Humayun was in exile in Tabriz in the Safavid court of Shah Tasma I of Persia, he was exposed to Persian miniature painting and commissioned at least one work there, or in Kabul, an unusually large painting on cloth of princes of the House of Temur, now in the British Museum. Originally a group portrait with his sons, in the next century Jahangir had it added to make it a dynastic group including dead ancestors. When Humayun returned to India, he brought two accomplished Persian artists with him, Abdul As-Samad and Mir Sayyid Ali. His usurping brother Kamran Mirza had maintained a workshop in Kabul, which Humayun perhaps took over into his own. Humayun's major known commission was a Khamsa of Nizami with 36 illuminated pages, in which the different styles of the various artists are still mostly apparent. Apart from the London painting, he also commissioned at least two miniatures showing himself with family members, a type of subject that was rare in Persia but common among the Mughals. Akbar, 1556 to 1605. During the reign of Humayun's son Akbar, R. 1556 to 1605, the imperial court, apart from being the center of administrative authority to manage and rule the vast Mughal empire, also emerged as a center of cultural excellence. Akbar inherited and expanded his father's library and atelier of court painters and paid personal attention to its output. He had studied painting in his youth under Abdul As-Samad, though it is not clear how far these studies went. Between 1560 to 1566, the Tutinama, now in the Cleveland Museum of Art, was illustrated, showing the stylistic components of the imperial Mughal style at a formative stage. Among other manuscripts, between 1562 and 1577, the atelier worked on an illustrated manuscript of the Hamzanama, consisting of 1400 cotton folios, unusually large at 69 centimeters into 54 centimeters, that is, approximately 27 into 20 inches, in size. This huge project served as a means of molding the disparate styles of his artists from Iran and from different parts of India into one unified style. By the end, the style reached maturity and the flat and decorative compositions of Persian painting have been transformed by creating a believable space in which characters painted in the round can perform. Saad Shirazi's masterpiece Gulistan was produced at Fatehpur Sikri in 1582, Abu Tahir Tarsusi's Darabnama around 1585, the Khamsa of Nizami British Library OR 12208 followed in the 1590s, and Jami's Baharistan around 1595 in Lahore. As Mughal-derived painting spread to Hindu courts, the texts illustrated included the Hindu epics, including the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, themes with animal fables, individual portraits, and paintings on scores of different themes. Mughal style during this period continued to refine itself with elements of realism and naturalism coming to the fore. Between 1570 to 1585, Akbar hired over 100 painters to practice Mughal-style painting. Akbar's rule established a celebratory theme among the Mughal Empire. In this new period, Akbar persuaded artists to focus on showing off spectacles and including grand symbols like elephants in their work to create the sense of a prospering empire. Along with this new mindset, Akbar also encouraged his people to write down and find a way to record what they remembered from earlier times to ensure that others would be able to remember the greatness of the Mughal Empire. To 1627. Jahangir had an artistic inclination, and during his reign, Mughal painting developed further. Brushwork became finer and the colors lighter. Jahangir was also deeply influenced by European painting. During his reign, he came into direct contact with the English crown and was sent gifts of oil paintings, which included portraits of the king and queen. He encouraged his royal atelier to take up the single-point perspective favored by European artists, unlike the flattened multi-layered style used in traditional miniatures. He particularly encouraged paintings depicting events of his own life, individual portraits, and studies of birds, flowers, and animals. The Tuzk-e-Jahangiri or Jahangirnama, written during his lifetime, which is an autobiographical account of Jahangir's reign, has several paintings, including some unusual subjects such as the union of a saint with a tigress and fights between spiders. Mughal paintings made during Jahangir's reign continued the trend of naturalism and were influenced by the resurgence of Persian styles and subjects over more traditional Hindu. Shah Jahan, 1628 to 1658. During the reign of Shah Jahan, 1628 to 58, Mughal paintings continued to develop, but court paintings became more rigid and formal. The illustrations from the Padshah-Nama, the Book of the Emperor, which is one of the finest Islamic manuscripts from the royal collection at Windsor, were painted during the reign of Shah Jahan. Written in Persian on paper that is flecked with gold, has exquisitely rendered paintings. The Padshah-Nama has portraits of the courtiers and servants of the king, painted with great detail and individuality. In keeping with the strict formality at court, however, the portraits of the king and important nobles was rendered in strict profile, whereas servants and common people, depicted with individual features, have been portrayed in the three-quarter view or the frontal view. Themes including musical parties, lovers, sometimes in intimate positions on terraces and gardens, and ascetics gathered around a fire, abound in the Mughal paintings of this period. Even though this period was titled the most prosperous, artists during this time were expected to adhere to representing life in court as organized and unified. For this reason, most art created under his rule focused mainly on the emperor and aided in establishing his authority. The purpose of this art was to leave behind an image of what the Mughals believed to be the ideal ruler and state. Later paintings. Aurangzeb, 1658 to 1607, was never an enthusiastic patron of painting, largely for religious reasons, and took a turn away from the pomp and ceremony of the court around 1668, after which he probably commissioned no more paintings. After 1681, he moved to the Deccan to pursue his slow conquest of the Deccan Sultanates, never returning to live in the north. Mughal paintings continued to survive, but the decline had set in. Some sources, however, note that a few of the best Mughal paintings were made for Aurangzeb, speculating that they believed that he was about to close the workshops and thus exceeded themselves in his behalf. There was a brief revival during the reign of Muhammad Shah, 1719 to 1748, but by the time of Shah Alam II, 1759 to 1806, the art of Mughal painting had lost its glory. By that time, other schools of Indian painting had developed, including in the royal courts of the Rajput kingdoms of Rajputana, Rajput painting, and in cities ruled by the British East India Company, the company style under Western influence. Late Mughal style often shows increased use of perspective and recession under Western influence, like in the works of Ghulam Ali Khan, Ghulam Murtaza Khan, and Mazhar Ali Khan. Many museums have significant collections of Mughal miniatures, like the National Museum of India, the Mehrangarh Museum Trust, the Rampur Raza Library, the Indian Museum, the British Library, which includes illustrated copies of the Razman Nama and Khamsa of Nizami, the Walters Art Museum, the National Museum of Asian Art, the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Cleveland Museum of Art, the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya, the San Diego Museum of Art, and the Royal Collection Trust. Artists. The Persian master artists Abdul Samad, Mir Musawwir, and his son, Mir Sayyid Ali, and Dust Muhammad, who had accompanied Humayun to India in the 16th century, were in charge of the imperial atelier during the formative stages of Mughal painting. These Persian artists were masters of their craft and had contributed to previous commissions like the Shahnameh of Shah Tahmasp. Dust Muhammad, who was a disciple of Kamaluddin Behzad, had also worked in the compiling of Bahram Mirza album and illustrations of the Cartier Hafiz. Many artists worked on large commissions, the majority of them apparently Hindu, to judge by the names recorded. Women artists were also a part of the Mughal atelier and contributed to commissions like in the Gulshan album, Murrakae Gulshan, which included the work of at least 3 women artists. Artists like Sahifa Bano drew portraits and copies of compositions by Kamaluddin Behzad and Sultan Ali al-Mashhadi, while others like Ruqayya Banu, Nuri Nadira Banu and Nini made copies of European engravings and prints in their own style. Mughal painting generally involved a group of artists, one generally the most senior, to decide and outline the composition, the second to actually paint, and perhaps a third who specialized in portraiture, executing individual faces. This was especially the case with the large historical book projects that dominated production during Akbar's reign, the Tutinama, Babarnama, Hamznama, Razmnama, and Akbarnama. For manuscripts of Persian poetry, there was a different way of working, with the best masters apparently expected to produce exquisitely finished miniatures, all or largely their own work. An influence in the evolution of style during Akbar's reign was Keshav Das, who understood and developed European techniques of rendering space and volume. Conveniently for modern scholars, Akbar liked to see the names of the artists written below each miniature. Analysis of manuscripts shows that individual miniatures were assigned to many painters. For example, the incomplete Razmnama in the British Library has 24 miniatures with 21 different names, although this may be an especially large number.
14 to 16 September 1681 was a princess of the Mughal Empire. She was the second and the eldest surviving child of Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan and Mumtaz Mahal. After Mumtaz Mahal's untimely death in 1631, the 17-year-old Jahanara was entrusted with the charge of the royal seal and conferred the title of Padshah Begum, First Lady of the Mughal Empire, even though her father had 3 surviving wives. She was Shah Jahan's favorite daughter and wielded major political influence during her father's reign and has been described as the most powerful woman in the empire at the time. Jahanara was an ardent partisan of her brother Dara Shikoh and supported him as her father's chosen successor. During the War of Succession, which took place after Shah Jahan's illness in 1657, Jahanara sided with the heir apparent Dara and joined her father in Agra fort, where he had been placed under house arrest by Aurangzeb. When Aurangzeb ascended to the throne, Jahanara was replaced by her younger sister Roshanara Begum as Padshah Begum. A devoted daughter, she took care of Shah Jahan until his death in 1666. Later, Jahanara reconciled with Aurangzeb, who gave her the title Empress of Princesses and replaced her younger sister Princess Roshanara Begum as the First Lady. Jahanara died during Aurangzeb's reign. She is known for her written works as well, which continue to be a primary way in which her presence in Sufism survives until today. She is well known for a biography of Sheikh Mu'in ad-Din Chishti, Munis al-Arwah, whom she believed to have been the highest of the Sufi saints in India and her spiritual master, despite having lived 4 centuries before her. Early life in education. Jahanara's early education was entrusted to Sati al-Nisa Khanum, the sister to Jahangir's poet laureate Talib Amuli. Sati al-Nisa was known for her knowledge of the Quran and Persian literature as well as for her knowledge of etiquette, housekeeping and medicine. She also served as principal lady-in-waiting to her mother Mumtaz Mahal. Many of the women in the imperial household were accomplished at reading, writing poetry and painting. They also played chess, polo, and hunted outdoors. The women had access to the late Emperor Akbar's library full of books on world religions and Persian, Turkish and Indian literature. Jahanara was no exception. From a carefree girl, she was pushed into government politics, overseeing domestic and international trade, and even mediating courtiers and foreigners to communicate with the emperor, and was involved in the tasks of resolving family disputes. Upon the death of Mumtaz Mahal in 1631, the 17-year-old Jahanara was entrusted with the charge of the royal seal and conferred the title of Padshah Begum, First Lady of the Mughal Empire, even though her father had 3 surviving wives. She was Shah Jahan's favorite daughter and wielded major political influence during her father's reign and has been described as the most powerful woman in the empire at the time. In 1644, when Aurangzeb angered his father, the Badshah, Jahanara interceded on her brother's behalf and convinced Shah Jahan to pardon him and restore his rank. Shah Jahan's fondness for his daughter was reflected in the multiple titles that he bestowed upon her, which included Sahibat al-Zamani, Lady of the Age, Padshah Begum, Lady Emperor, and Begum Sahib, Princess of Princesses. Her power was such that unlike the other imperial princesses, she was allowed to live in her own palace outside the confines of Agra Fort. There she held her own court where she entertained nobles, ministers, officers, clerics and ambassadors and discussed government affairs or their requests. Foreign trade was known to be an aspect of the empire which felt her influence. It is recorded that the Dutch embassy, in attempting to get permission for trade, had taken note of the importance of Jahanara's approval in swaying her father Shah Jahan. In addition to this, she often travelled from the capital, accepting many beggars and petitioners from the people, and issued hukm or farman to meet the needs of society.
Just days after her 30th birthday, Jahanara suffered serious burns on her body and almost died of her injuries. Shah Jahan ordered that vast sums of alms be given to the poor, prisoners be released, and prayers offered for the recovery of the princess. Aurangzeb, Murad, and Shaista Khan returned to Delhi to see her. Accounts differ as to what happened. Some say Jahanara's garments, doused in fragrant perfume oils, caught fire. Other accounts assert that the princess's favorite dancing woman's dress caught fire, and the princess, coming to her aid, burnt herself on the chest. During her illness, Shah Jahan was so concerned about the welfare of his favorite daughter that he made only brief appearances at his daily darbar in the Diwan-e-Am. Royal physicians failed to heal Jahanara's burns. A Persian doctor came to treat her, and her condition improved for a number of months. But then there was no further improvement until a royal page named Arif Chela mixed an ointment that, after 2 more months, finally caused the wounds to close. A year after the accident, Jahanara fully recovered. After the accident, the princess went on a pilgrimage to Moinuddin Chishti's shrine in Ajmer. After her recovery, Shah Jahan gave Jahanara rare gems and jewelry and bestowed upon her the revenues of the port of Surat. She later visited Ajmer, following the example set by her great-grandfather Akbar. Wealth and charity. In honor of his coronation, on 6 February 1628, Shah Jahan awarded his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, Jahanara's mother, the title of Padshah Begum, and 200,000 ashrafis, Persian gold coins worth 2 mohurs, 600,000 rupees, and an annual privy purse of 1 million rupees. Moreover, Shah Jahan presented Mumtaz with jewels worth 5 million rupees. Jahanara was given the title of Begum Sahiba and received 100,000 ashrafis, 400,000 rupees, and an annual grant of 600,000, and she was also awarded jewels worth 2 million and 500,000 rupees. Upon Mumtaz Mahal's death, her personal fortune was divided by Shah Jahan between Jahanara Begum, who received half, and the rest of Mumtaz Mahal's surviving children. Jahanara was allotted income from a number of villages and owned several gardens, including Bagh-e Jahanara, Bagh-e Noor, and Bagh-e Safa. Her Jagir included the villages of Achhol, Pharjahara, and the Sarkars of Bachhol, Safapur, and Dohara. The Pargana of Panipat was also granted to her. As mentioned above, she was also given the prosperous city of Surat. Her great-grandmother, Maryam-uz-Zamani, established an international trading business in the Mughal Empire and owned several trading ships like Rahimi and Ganj-e-Savai, which dealt between Surat and the Red Sea, trading silk, indigo, and spices. Noor Jahan continued the business, trading in indigo and cloth. Later, Jahanara continued the tradition. She owned a number of ships and maintained trade relations with the English and the Dutch. Jahanara was known for her active participation in looking after the poor and financing the building of mosques. When her ship, the Sahibi, was to set sail for its first journey, on 29 October 1643, she ordered that the ship make its voyage to Makkah and Medina, and that every year 50 koni, 1 koni was 4 months or 51 pounds, of rice should be sent by the ship for distribution among the destitute and needy of Makkah. As the de facto primary queen of the Mughal Empire, Jahanara was responsible for charitable donations. She organized almsgiving on important state holidays and religious festivals, supported famine relief and pilgrimages to Makkah. Jahanara made important financial contributions in the support of learning and arts. She supported the publication of a series of works on Islamic mysticism, including commentaries on Rumi's Mathnavi, a very popular mystical work in Mughal India. Brother, Dara Shikho, she was a disciple of Mullah Shah Badakhshi, who initiated her into the Qadariya Sufi order in 1641. Jahanara Begum made such progress on the Sufi path that Mullah Shah would have named her his successor in the Qadariya, but the rules of the order did not allow this. She wrote a biography of Muinuddin Chishti, the founder of the Chishti order in India, titled Munis al-Arwaha, which means confidant of souls, as well as a biography of Mullah Shah titled Risala-is-Sahibiya, in which she also described her initiation by him. Her biography of Muinuddin Chishti is highly regarded for its judgment and literary quality. In it, she regarded him as having initiated her spiritually 4 centuries after his death, described her pilgrimage to Ajmer, and spoke of herself as a fakira to signify her vocation as a Sufi woman. An aspect of her Sufi work also included an autobiographical narrative detailing her thoughts and experiences, titled Sahibiya, the Lady's Treatise, and contained information pertaining to her spiritual experience, her search for a Sufi master, and her transitioning to the Qadariya order in Lahore. This transition was a complicated decision to make. It occurred to me that I was a disciple of the Chishti order, but now that I was entering the Qadariya order, would there be conflict in me? Jahanara Begum stated that she and her brother Dara Shikho were the only descendants of Taimur to embrace Sufism. However, Aurangzeb was spiritually trained as a follower of Sufism as well. As a patron of Sufi literature, she commissioned translations and commentaries of many works of classic Sufi literature. War of Succession. Shah Jahan fell seriously ill in 1657. A war of succession broke out among his 4 sons, Dara Shikho, Shah Shuja, Aurangzeb, and Murad Bakhsh. During the War of Succession, Jahanara supported her brother Dara Shikho, the eldest son of Shah Jahan. When Dara Shikho's general sustained a defeat at Dharmat, 1658, at the hands of Aurangzeb, Jahanara wrote a letter to Aurangzeb and advised him not to disobey his father and fight with his brother. She was unsuccessful. Dara was badly defeated in the Battle of Samugarh on 29 May 1658 and fled towards Delhi. Shah Jahan did everything he could to stop the planned invasion of Agra. He asked Jahanara to use her diplomacy to convince Murad and Shuja not to throw their weight on the side of Aurangzeb. In June 1658, Aurangzeb besieged Shah Jahan in the Agra fort, forcing him to surrender unconditionally by cutting off the water supply. Jahanara came to Aurangzeb on 10th June, proposing a partition of the empire. Dara Shikoh would get the Punjab and adjoining territories, Shuja would get Bengal, Murad would get Gujarat, Aurangzeb's son Sultan Muhammad would get the Deccan, and the rest of the empire would go to Aurangzeb. However, Aurangzeb refused Jahanara's proposition on the grounds that Dara Shikoh was an infidel. On Aurangzeb's ascent to the throne, Jahanara joined her father in imprisonment at the Agra fort, where she devoted herself to his care until his death in 1666. Her rival and younger sister Roshanara replaced her as Padshah Begum and Begum Sahib and took over the control of the imperial family and palace thanks to the assistance she had rendered to Aurangzeb during the War of Succession.
And Aurangzeb reconciled. He restored her former titles to her, Padshah Begum, Lady Emperor or Grand Empress, and Begum Sahib, Princess of Princes, and bestowed upon her a new title, Shahzadi Sahib, Empress of Princes. Again, the control of the Khandani Shahi royal family and the Zanana harem was entrusted to her. Jahanara replaced Roshanara as the First Lady. As the First Lady of his court, her annual allowance was raised from 1 million rupees during the reign of Shah Jahan to 1.7 million rupees. In addition, Aurangzeb again gave her the revenue of the port of Surat and a grand mansion in Delhi, where Aurangzeb would spend hours conversing with her. Aurangzeb respected her and sought her counsel in matters of state and public welfare. She never shied from arguing with the emperor in order to prove her point, especially when it concerned his enforced austerity measures or his practice of religious intolerance. Jahanara re-entered politics and was influential in various important matters and had certain special privileges which other women did not possess. An independent life with a private palace of her own, the power to issue hukm or farman, an imperial order that was only the emperor's right, to attend the council, shura or divan, to receive audiences in her palace, and to mediate between officers, politicians and foreign kings and the emperor. She also argued against Aurangzeb's strict regulation of public life in accordance with his conservative religious beliefs and his decision in 1679 to restore the poll tax on non-Muslims, which she believed would alienate his Hindu subjects. She publicly quarreled with him on these issues and criticized him for his policy. Relationship with Shah Jahan. Jahanara's influence in Mughal administration resulted in several rumors and accusations of an incestuous relationship with her father, Shah Jahan. Such accusations have been dismissed by modern historians as gossip, as no witness of an incident has been mentioned. Historian K.S. Lal also dismisses such claims as rumors propagated by courtiers and mullahs. He cites Aurangzeb's confining of Jahanara in the Agra fort with the royal prisoner and gossip magnifying a rumor. Several contemporary travelers have mentioned such accusations. François Bernier, a French physician, mentions rumors of an incestuous relationship being propagated in the Mughal court. However, Bernier did not mention witnessing such a relationship. Niccolao Magnucci, a Venetian traveler, dismisses such accusations by Bernier as gossip and the talk of the low people. Burial. Jahanara had her tomb built during her lifetime. It is constructed entirely of white marble with a screen of trellis work open to the sky. Upon her death, Aurangzeb gave her the posthumous title Sahibatu-Zamani, Mistress of the Age. Jahanara is buried in a tomb in the Nizamuddin Dargah complex in New Delhi, which is considered remarkable for its simplicity. The inscription on the tomb reads as follows: Allah is the living, the sustaining. Let no one cover my grave except with greenery, for this very grass suffices as a tomb cover for the poor. The mortal simplistic princess, Jahanara, disciple of the Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, daughter of Shah Jahan the Conqueror. May Allah illuminate his proof. 1092-1681. Ara Begum's caravanserai that formed the original Chandni Chowk from Sir Thomas Theophilus Metcalfe's 1843 album.
In Agra, she is best known for sponsoring the building of the Jami Masjid of Friday Mosque in 1648 in the heart of the old city. The mosque was funded entirely by Jahanara using her personal allowance. In addition to this mosque, she also financed the construction of the Mullah Shah Mosque, which is located in Srinagar. She founded a madrasa, which was attached to the Jama Masjid for the promotion of education. She also funded the making of a garden in Kashmir. She was a benefactor of the people. She also made a significant impact on the landscape of the capital city of Shahjahanabad. Of the 18 buildings in the city of Shahjahanabad commissioned by women, Jahanara commissioned 5. All of Jahanara's building projects were completed around the year 1650 inside the city walls of Shahjahanabad. The best known of her projects was Chandni Chowk, the main street in the walled city of Old Delhi. She constructed an elegant caravanserai on the east side of the street with gardens in the back. Herbert Charles Fanshawe in 1902 mentions about the sarai. Proceeding up the Chandni Chowk and passing many shops of the principal dealers in jewels, embroideries and other products of Delhi handicrafts, the Northbrook Clock Tower and the principal entrance to the Queen's Gardens are reached. The former is situated at the site of the caravanserai of the Princess Jahanara Begum by the title of Shah Begum. The sarai, the square in front of which projected across the street, was considered by Bernier one of the finest buildings in Delhi, and was compared by him with the Palais Royal because of its arcades below and rooms with a gallery in front above. The sarai was later replaced by, now known as the town hall, and the pool in the middle of the square was replaced by a grand clock tower or ghantaghar. In popular culture, Indian filmmaker F.R. Irani made Jahanara 1935, an early talkie film about her. Her early life is depicted in the Royal Diaries book series as Jahanara, Princess of Princesses, India, 1627, by Catherine Lasky. Jahanara is the protagonist of the novel Beneath a Marble Sky 2013 by John Shores. She is the main character in the novel Shadow Princess 2010, written by Indu Sundaresan. Jahanara is also the main character in Jean Bothwell's An Omen for a Princess 1963. She is also the protagonist in Ruchir Gupta's historical novel Mistress of the Throne 2014. Madhubala, Mala Sinha and Manisha Koirala have portrayed the role of Jahanara in their respective films, namely Mumtaz Mahal 1944, Jahanara 1964 and Taj Mahal An Eternal Love Story 2005. Jahanara is a main character of the 2017 alternate history novel 1636 Mission to the Mughals and the 2021 follow-up novel 1637 The Peacock Throne from the Ring of Fire book series. Jahanara, a character inspired from the historical figure, is the main character of the 2022 Pakistani historical drama series Badshah Begum TV series, played by Zara Noor Abbas, produced by Momina Dured and Rafa Rashidi under the banner of MD Productions, Hum TV. Also called Shah Jahan the Magnificent, was the emperor of Hindustan from 1628 until his deposition in 1658. As the fifth Mughal emperor, his reign marked the zenith of Mughal architectural and cultural achievements. The third son of Jahangir, Shah Jahan participated in the military campaigns against the Sisodia Rajputs of Mewar and the rebel Lodi nobles of the Deccan. After Jahangir's death in October 1627, Shah Jahan defeated his youngest brother, Shahryar Mirza, and crowned himself emperor in the Agra fort. In addition to Shahryar, Shah Jahan executed most of his rival claimants to the throne. He commissioned many monuments, including the Red Fort, Shah Jahan Mosque and the Taj Mahal, where his favorite consort Mumtaz Mahal is entombed. In foreign affairs, Shah Jahan presided over the aggressive campaigns against the Deccan Sultanates, the conflicts with the Portuguese, and the wars with the Safavids. He also suppressed several local rebellions and dealt with the devastating Deccan famine of 1630-32. In September 1657, Shah Jahan was ailing and appointed his eldest son Dara Shikoh as his successor. This nomination led to the Mughal War of Succession 1658 to 1659 among his three sons, with Aurangzeb (1658 to 1707), emerging victorious to become the sixth emperor, executing all of his surviving brothers, including the crown prince Dara Shikoh. After Shah Jahan recovered from his illness in July 1658, Aurangzeb imprisoned him in the Agra fort from July 1658 until his death in January 1666. He was laid to rest next to his wife in the Taj Mahal. His reign is known for doing away with the liberal policies initiated by his grandfather Akbar. During Shah Jahan's time, Islamic revivalist movements like the Naqshbandi began to shape Mughal policies. Early life, birth and background. He was born on 5 January 1592 in Lahore, present-day Pakistan, as the ninth child and third son of Prince Salim, later known as Jahangir upon his accession, and his chief consort, Jagat Gosain. The name Khurram, Persian, literally joyous, was chosen for the young prince by his grandfather, Emperor Akbar, with whom the young prince shared a close relationship. Jahangir stated that Akbar was very fond of Khurram and had often told him, "There is no comparison between him and your other sons. I consider him my true son." When Khurram was born, Akbar, considering him to be auspicious, insisted the prince be raised in his household rather than Salim's, and was thus entrusted to the care of Ruqayya Sultan Begum. Ruqayya assumed the primary responsibility for raising Khurram and is noted to have raised Khurram affectionately. Jahangir noted in his memoirs that Ruqayya had loved his son Khurram 1,000 times more than if he had been her own son. However, after the death of his grandfather Akbar in 1605, he returned to the care of his mother, Jagat Gosain, whom he cared for and loved immensely. Although separated from her at birth, he had become devoted to her and had her addressed as Hazrat in court chronicles. On the death of Jagat Gosain in Agrabad on April 8, 1619, he is recorded to be inconsolable by Jahangir and mourned for 21 days. For these 3 weeks of the mourning period, he attended no public meetings and subsisted on simple vegetarian meals. His consort Mumtaz Mahal personally supervised the distribution of food to the poor during this period. She led the recitation of the Quran every morning and gave her husband many lessons on the substance of life and death and begged him not to grieve.
Khurram received a broad education befitting his status as a Mughal prince, which included martial training and exposure to a wide variety of cultural arts, such as poetry and music, most of which were inculcated, according to court chronicles, by Jahangir. According to his chronicler Qazvini, Prince Khurram was only familiar with a few Turki words and showed little interest in the study of the language as a child. Khurram was attracted to Hindi literature since his childhood, and his Hindi letters were mentioned in his father's biography, Tuzuk-e-Jahangiri. In 1605, as Akbar lay on his deathbed, young Khurram remained by his bedside and refused to move even after his mother tried to retrieve him. Given the politically uncertain times immediately preceding Akbar's death, Khurram was in a fair amount of physical danger from political opponents of his father. He was at last ordered to return to his quarters by the senior women of his grandfather's household, namely Salima Sultan Begum and his grandmother Maryam-uz-Zamani, as Akbar's health deteriorated. Khusrau Rebellion. In 1605, his father succeeded to the throne after crushing a rebellion by Prince Khusrau. Khurram left Ruqayya's care and returned to his mother's care. As the third son, Khurram did not challenge the two major power blocks of the time, his father's and his half-brothers, thus he enjoyed the benefits of imperial protection and luxury while being allowed to continue with his education and training. This relatively quiet and stable period of his life allowed Khurram to build his own support base in the Mughal court, which would be useful later on in his life. Jahangir assigned Khurram to guard the palace and treasury while he went to pursue Khusrau. He was later ordered to bring Maryam-uz-Zamani, his grandmother, and Jahangir's harem to him. During Khusrau's second rebellion, Khurram's informants informed him that Fatehullah, Nuruddin and Muhammad Sharif gathered around 500 men at Khusrau's instigation and lay await for the emperor. Khurram relayed this information to Jahangir, who praised him. Jahangir had Khurram weighed against gold, silver and other wealth at his mansion at Orta.
Noor Jahan. Due to the long period of tensions between his father and his half-brother, Khusrau Mirza, Khurram began to drift closer to his father and over time started to be considered the de facto heir apparent by court chronicles. This status was given official sanction when Jahangir granted the Sarkar of Hisar-e-Firoza, which had traditionally been the fief of the heir apparent, to Khurram in 1608. After her marriage to Jahangir in the year 2011, Noor Jahan gradually became an active participant in all decisions made by Jahangir and gained extreme powers in administration, so much so that it was obvious to everyone, both inside and outside, that most of his decisions were actually hers. Slowly, while Jahangir became more indulgent in wine and opium, she was considered to be the actual power behind the throne. Her near and dear relatives acquired important positions in the Mughal court, termed the Noor Jahan junta by historians. Khurram was in constant conflict with his stepmother Noor Jahan, who favoured her son-in-law Shahryar Mirza for the succession to the Mughal throne over him. In the last years of Jahangir's life in 1627, Noor Jahan was in full power and the emperor had left all the burden of governance on her. She tried to weaken Khurram's position in the Mughal court by sending him on campaigns far in the Deccan while ensuring several favours were being bestowed on her son-in-law. Khurram, after sensing the danger posed to his status as heir apparent, rebelled against his father in 1622 but did not succeed and eventually lost the favour of his father. Several years before Jahangir's death in 1627, coins began to be struck containing Noor Jahan's name along with Jahangir's name. In fact, there were two prerogatives of sovereignty for the legitimacy of a Muslim monarchy: reading the khutbah and the other being the right to mint coins. After the death of Jahangir in 1627, a struggle developed between Khurram and his half-brother Shahryar Mirza for the succession to the Mughal throne. Khurram won the battle of succession and became the fifth Mughal emperor. Noor Jahan was subsequently deprived of her imperial stature, authority, privileges, honours and economic grants and was put under house arrest on the orders of Khurram, and led a quiet and comfortable life till her death.
7. Khurram became engaged to Arjumand Banu Begum, 1593 to 1631, who is also known as Mumtaz Mahal, Persian literal, the exalted one of the palace. They were about 14 and 15 when they were engaged, and 5 years later they married. The young girl belonged to an illustrious Persian noble family that included Abul Hasan Asaf Khan, who had been serving Mughal emperors since the reign of Akbar. The family's patriarch was Mirza Ghias Beg, who was also known by his title Atimad-ud-Dola, or Pillar of the State. He had been Jahangir's finance minister, and his son, Asaf Khan, Arjumand Banu's father, played an important role in the Mughal court, eventually serving as chief minister. Her aunt Meherun Nisa later became the Empress Noor Jahan, chief consort of Emperor Jahangir. The prince would have to wait 5 years before he was married in 1612-1021 AH, on a date selected by the court astrologers as most conducive to ensuring a happy marriage. This was an unusually long engagement for the time. However, Shah Jahan first married a Persian princess, name not known, entitled Kandahari Begum, the daughter of a great-grandson of the great Shah Ismail I of Persia, with whom he had a daughter, his first child. In 1612, aged 20, Khurram married Mumtaz Mahal on a date chosen by court astrologers. The marriage was a happy one, and Khurram remained devoted to her. They had 14 children, out of whom 7 survived into adulthood. Though there was genuine love between the two, Arjumand Banu Begum was a politically astute woman and served as a crucial advisor and confidant to her husband. Later on, as Empress, Mumtaz Mahal wielded immense power, such as being consulted by her husband in state matters, attending the council, or Surah or Diwan, and being responsible for the imperial seal, which allowed her to review official documents in their final draft. Shah Jahan also gave her the right to issue her own orders, or hukums, and make appointments to him. Mumtaz Mahal died at the young age of 38, 7 June 1931, upon giving birth to Princess Gohar Ara Begum in the city of Burhanpur, Deccan, of a postpartum hemorrhage, which caused considerable blood loss after painful labor of 30 hours.
Contemporary historians noted that Princess Jahanara, aged 17, was so distressed by her mother's pain that she started distributing gems to the poor, hoping for divine intervention, and Shah Jahan was noted as being paralyzed by grief and weeping fits. Her body was temporarily buried in a walled pleasure garden known as Zainabad, originally constructed by Shah Jahan's uncle, Prince Danyal, along the Tapti River. Her death had a profound impact on Shah Jahan's personality and inspired the construction of the marvelous Taj Mahal, where she was later reburied. Khurram had taken other wives, among whom were Kandhari Begum, marriage on 28 October 1610, and another Persian princess, Izun Nisa Begum, marriage on 2 September 1617, the daughters of Prince Muzaffar Hussain Mirza Safavi and Shahnawaz Khan, son of Abdul Rahim Khane-Khana, respectively. But according to court chroniclers, these marriages were more out of political consideration and they enjoyed only the status of being royal wives. Khurram is also recorded to have married Leelavati Deji, daughter of a low-caste slave concubine, and Kumar Shakti Singh, son of Mota Raja Uday Singh and half-brother of Raja Sur Singh of Marwar. The marriage took place at Jodhpur when Khurram was in rebellion against his father, Emperor Jahangir. Relation with Jahanara. After Shah Jahan fell ill in 1658, his daughter Jahanara Begum had a significant influence in the Mughal administration. As a result, several accusations of incestual relationship between Shah Jahan and Jahanara were propagated. Such accusations have been dismissed by modern historians as gossip, as no witness of an incident has been mentioned. Historian K.S. Lal also dismisses such claims as rumors propagated by courtiers and mullahs. He cites Aurangzeb's confining of Jahanara in the Agra fort with the royal prisoner and the talk of the low people magnifying a rumor. Several contemporary travelers have mentioned such accessions. Francois Bernier, a French physician, mentions rumors of an incestual relationship being propagated in the Mughal court. However, Bernier did not mention witnessing such a relationship. Niccolao Manucci, a Venetian traveler, dismisses such accusations by Bernier as gossip and the talk of the low people.
Khurram showed extraordinary military talent. The first occasion for Khurram to test his military prowess was during the Mughal campaign against the Rajput state of Mewar, which had been a hostile force to the Mughals since Akbar's reign. After a year of a harsh war of attrition, Rana Amar Singh I surrendered conditionally to the Mughal forces and became a vassal state of the Mughal Empire as a result of Mughal expedition of Mewar. In 1615, Khurram presented Kuwar Karan Singh, Amar Singh's heir, to Jahangir. Khurram was sent to pay homage to his mother and stepmothers and was later awarded by Jahangir. The same year, his mansab was increased from 12,000/6,000 to 15,000/7,000 to equal that of his brother Parvez's, and was further increased to 20,000/10,000 in 1616. In 1616, on Khurram's departure to Deccan, Jahangir awarded him the title of Shah Sultan Khurram. In 1617, Khurram was directed to deal with the Lodhis in the Deccan to secure the empire's southern borders and to restore imperial control over the region. On his return in 1617, after successes in these campaigns, Khurram performed Koronosh before Jahangir, who called him to Jharokha and rose from his seat to embrace him. Jahangir also granted him the title of Shah Jahan, Persian meaning King of the World, and raised his military rank to 30,000/20,000 and allowed him a special throne in his darbar, an unprecedented honor for a prince. Edward S. Holden writes, "He was flattered by some, envied by others, loved by none." In 1618, Shah Jahan was given the first copy of Tuzuke Jahangiri by his father, who considered him the first of all my sons in everything. Rebel prince. Not always determined through primogeniture, but also by princely sons competing to achieve military successes and consolidating their power at court. This often led to rebellions and wars of succession. As a result, a complex political climate surrounded the Mughal court in Shah Jahan's formative years. In 1611, his father married Noor Jahan, the widowed daughter of a Persian noble.
She rapidly became an important member of Jahangir's court and together with her brother Asaf Khan wielded considerable influence. Arjumand was Asaf Khan's daughter and her marriage to Khurram consolidated Noorjahan and Asaf Khan's positions in court. Court intrigues, however, including Noorjahan's decision to have her daughter from her first marriage wed Prince Khurram's youngest brother Shahzada Shahriyar, and her support for his claim to the throne led to much internal division. Prince Khurram resented the influence Noorjahan held over his father and was angered at having to play second fiddle to her favorite Shahriyar, his half-brother and her son-in-law. When the Persians besieged Kandahar, Noorjahan was at the helm of the affairs. She ordered Prince Khurram to march to Kandahar, but he refused. As a result of Prince Khurram's refusal to obey Noorjahan's orders, Kandahar was lost to the Persians after a 45-day siege. Prince Khurram feared that in his absence, Noorjahan would attempt to poison his father against him and convince Jahangir to name Shahriyar the heir in his place. This fear brought Prince Khurram to rebel against his father rather than fight against the Persians. Khurram raised an army and marched against his father. He was defeated at Bilochpur in March 1623. Later he took refuge in Udaipur, Mewar, with Maharana Karan Singh II. He was first lodged in Dilbada Ki Haveli and subsequently shifted to Jagmandir Palace on his request. Prince Khurram exchanged his turban with the Maharana, and that turban is still preserved in Pratap Museum, Udaipur, R.V. Somani, 1976. It is believed that the mosaic work of Jagmandir inspired him to use mosaic work in the Taj Mahal of Agra. In November 1623, he found safe asylum in Bengal, Suba, after he was driven from Agra and the Deccan. He advanced through Midnapur and Bardwan. At Akbarnagar, he defeated and killed the then Subedar of Bengal, Ibrahim Khan Fateh Jung, on 20th April 1624. He entered Dhaka, and all the elephants, horses and 4 million rupees in specie belonging to the government were delivered to him. After a short stay, he then moved to Patna. His rebellion did not succeed in the end, and he was forced to submit unconditionally after he was defeated near Allahabad. Although the prince was forgiven for his errors in 1626, tensions between Noorjahan and her stepson continued to grow beneath the surface. Upon the death of Jahangir in 1627, the Wazir Asaf Khan, who had long been a quiet partisan of Prince Khurram, acted with unexpected forcefulness and determination to forestall his sister's plans to place Prince Shahriyar on the throne. He put Noorjahan in close confinement. He obtained control of Prince Khurram's 3 sons who were under her charge. Asaf Khan also managed palace intrigues to ensure Prince Khurram's succession to the throne. Prince Khurram succeeded to the Mughal throne as Abu ud Muzaffar Shihabuddin Muhammad Sahib al-Quran ud Thani Shah Jahan Padshah Ghazi, or Shah Jahan. His regnal name is divided into various parts. Shihabuddin meaning star of the faith, Sahib al-Quran ud Thani meaning second lord of the happy conjunction of Jupiter and Venus, Shah Jahan meaning king of the world, alluding to his pride in his Taimurid roots and his ambitions. More epithets showed his secular and religious duties. He was also titled Hazrat-e-Shahenshah, His Imperial Majesty, Hazrat-e-Khilafat Panahi, His Majesty the Refuge of the Caliphate, Hazrat-e-Zille-Ilahi, His Majesty the Shadow of God. His first act as ruler was to execute his chief rivals and imprison his stepmother Noorjahan. Upon Shah Jahan's orders, several executions took place on 23 January 1628. Those put to death included his brother Shahriyar, his nephews Dawar and Garshasp, sons of Shah Jahan's previously executed brother Prince Khusro, and his cousins Taimuras and Hoshang, sons of the late Prince Danlal Mirza. This allowed Shah Jahan to rule his empire without contention. Reign. Evidence from the reign of Shah Jahan states that in 1648, the army consisted of 911,400 infantry, musketeers, and artillerymen and 185,000 savars commanded by princes and nobles. His cultural and political initial steps have been described as a type of the Taimurid Renaissance, in which he built historical and political bonds with his Taimurid heritage, mainly through his numerous unsuccessful military campaigns on his ancestral region of Balkh. In various forms, Shah Jahan appropriated his Taimurid background and grafted it onto his imperial legacy. During his reign, the Marwari horse was introduced, becoming Shah Jahan's favorite, and various Mughal cannons were mass-produced in Jaigarh Fort. Under his rule, the empire became a huge military machine, and the nobles and their contingents multiplied almost 4 times, as did the demands for more revenue from their citizens. But due to his measures in the financial and commercial fields, it was a period of general stability, the administration was centralized, and court affairs systematized. The Mughal Empire continued to expand moderately during his reign as his sons commanded large armies on different fronts. India at that time was a rich center of the arts, crafts, and architecture, and some of the best of the architects, artisans, craftsmen, painters, and writers of the world resided in Shah Jahan's empire. According to economist Angus Maddison, Mughal-era India's share of global gross domestic product (GDP) grew from 22.7% in 1600 to 24.4% in 1700. Surpassing China to become the world's largest. E. Devick and Murray Titus, quoting Badshah-nama, write that 76 temples in Banaras were demolished on Shah Jahan's orders.
Main article: Deccan Famine of 1630 to 32. A famine broke out in 1630 to 32 in Deccan, Gujarat and Khandesh as a result of 3 main crop failures. 2 million people died of starvation. Grocers sold dog's flesh and mixed powdered bones with flour. It is reported that parents ate their own children. Some villages were completely destroyed, their streets filled with human corpses. In response to the devastation, Shah Jahan set up langar, free kitchens, for the victims of the famine. Successful military campaigns against Deccan Sultanates. In 1632, Shah Jahan captured the fortress at Daulatabad, Maharashtra, and imprisoned Hussain Shah of the Nizam Shahi Kingdom of Ahmednagar. Golconda submitted in 1635 and then Bijapur in 1636. Shah Jahan appointed Aurangzeb as Viceroy of the Deccan, consisting of Khandesh, Barar, Telangana and Daulatabad. During his viceroyalty, Aurangzeb conquered Baglana, where he defeated Baharji, the Raja. The small Maratha kingdom of Baglana straddled the main route from Surat and the western ports to Burhanpur in the Deccan and had been subservient to one Muslim ruler or another for centuries. In 1637, however, Shah Jahan decided on complete annexation. Baharji, who had commanded the Baglana forces, died soon after the conquest. His son converted to Islam and received the title of Daulatmand Khan. Aurangzeb then defeated Golconda in 1656 and then Bijapur in 1657. Relations with the Safavid dynasty. Shah Jahan and his sons captured the city of Kandahar in 1638 from the Safavids, prompting the retaliation of the Persians led by their ruler Abbas II of Persia, who recaptured it in 1649. The Mughal armies were unable to recapture it despite repeated sieges during the Mughal-Safavid War. Shah Jahan also expanded the Mughal Empire to the west beyond the Khyber Pass to Ghazna and Kandahar. Military campaign in Central Asia. Shah Jahan launched an invasion of Central Asia from 1646 to 1647 against the Khandate of Bukhara. With a total army of 75,000, Shah Jahan and his sons Aurangzeb and Murad Bakhsh temporarily occupied the territories of Balkh and Badakhshan. However, they retreated from the fruitless lands and Balkh and Badakhshan returned to Bukharan control. Relations with the Ottoman Empire. Shah Jahan sent an embassy to the Ottoman court in 1637. Led by Mir Zarif, it reached Sultan Murad IV the following year while he was encamped in Baghdad. Zarif presented him with fine gifts and a letter that encouraged an alliance against Safavid Persia. The Sultan sent a return embassy led by Arsalan Aga. Shah Jahan received the ambassador in June 1640. Citation needed. The fourth is known to have met ambassadors of the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan, Mir Zarif and Mir Baraka, who presented 1,000 pieces of finely embroidered cloth and even armor.
Murad IV gave them the finest weapons, saddles and kaftans, and ordered his forces to accompany the Mughals to the port of Basra, where they set sail to Thatta and finally Surat. They exchanged lavish presents, but Shah Jahan was displeased with Sultan Murad's return letter, the tone of which he found discourteous. Sultan Murad's successor, Sultan Ibrahim, sent Shah Jahan another letter, encouraging him to wage war against the Persians, but there is no record of a reply. War with Portuguese. Shah Jahan gave orders in 1631 to Qasim Khan, the Mughal viceroy of Bengal, to drive out the Portuguese from their trading post at Port Hooghly. The post was heavily armed with cannons, battleships, fortified walls, and other instruments of war. The Portuguese were accused of trafficking by high Mughal officials, and due to commercial competition, the Mughal-controlled port of Saptagram began to slump. Shah Jahan was particularly outraged by the activities of Jesuits in that region, notably when they were accused of abducting peasants. On 25 September 1632, the Mughal army raised imperial banners and gained control over the Bandral region, and the garrison was punished. On 23 December 1635, Shah Jahan issued a farman ordering the Agra church to be demolished. The church was occupied by the Portuguese Jesuits. However, the emperor allowed the Jesuits to conduct their religious ceremonies in privacy. He also banned the Jesuits from preaching their religion and making converts from both Hindus and Muslims. Though in the decree, he also granted 777 bighas of rent-free land to the Augustine Fathers and the Christian community in Bandel, currently in West Bengal, shaping its Portuguese heritage for times to come. Revolts against Shah Jahan. The Kolis of Gujarat rebelled against the rule of Shah Jahan. In 1622, Shah Jahan sent Raja Vikramjit, the governor of Gujarat, to subdue the Kolis of Ahmedabad. Between 1632 and 1635, 4 viceroys were appointed in an effort to manage the Kolis' activities. The Kolis of Kankrej in North Gujarat committed excesses, and the Jam of Nawanagar refused to pay tribute to Shah Jahan. Soon Azam Khan was appointed in an effort to subdue the Kolis and bring order to the province. Azam Khan marched against Koli rebels. When Azam Khan reached Sidhpur, the local merchants complained bitterly of the outrages of one Kanji, a Chunwalia Koli, who had been especially daring in plundering merchandise and committing highway robberies. Azam Khan, anxious to start with a show of vigor before proceeding to Ahmedabad, marched against Kanji, who fled to the village of Bhadar near Kheralu, 60 miles northeast of Ahmedabad. Azam Khan pursued him so hotly that Kanji surrendered, handed over his plunder, and guaranteed that he would not only cease to commit robberies but also pay an annual tribute of rupees 10,000. Azam Khan then built 2 fortified posts in the Kolis territory, naming one Azamabad after himself and the other Khalilabad after his son. Additionally, he forced the surrender of the Jam of Nawanagar. The next viceroy, Isa Tar Khan, carried out financial reforms. In 1644, the Mughal prince Aurangzeb was appointed as the viceroy, who then proceeded to become engaged in religious disputes such as the destruction of a Jain temple in Ahmedabad. Due to these disputes, he was replaced by Shaista Khan, who failed to subdue Kolis. Subsequently, Prince Murad Bakhsh was appointed as the viceroy in 1654. He restored order and defeated the Koli rebels.
Jahan became ill in 1658. Dara Shikoh, Mumtaz Mahal's eldest son, assumed the role of regent in his father's stead, which swiftly incurred the animosity of his brothers. Upon learning of his assumption of the regency, his younger brothers, Shuja, Viceroy of Bengal, and Murad Bakhsh, Viceroy of Gujarat, declared their independence and marched upon Agra in order to claim their riches. Aurangzeb, the third son, gathered a well-trained army and became its chief commander. He faced Dara's army near Agra and defeated him during the Battle of Samugarh. Although Shah Jahan fully recovered from his illness, Aurangzeb declared him incompetent to rule and put him under house arrest in Agra fort. Jahanara Begum Sahib, Mumtaz Mahal's eldest surviving daughter, voluntarily shared his 8-year confinement and nursed him in his dotage. In January 1666, Shah Jahan fell ill. Confined to bed, he became progressively weaker until, on 22 January, he commended the ladies of the imperial court, particularly his consort of later years Akbarabadi Mahal, to the care of Jahanara. After reciting the Kalma, or La ilaha illallah, and verses from the Quran, Shah Jahan died, aged 74.
Shah Jahan's chaplain Sayyid Muhammad Kanauji and Qazi Qurban of Agra came to the fort, moved his body to a nearby hall, washed it, enshrouded it, and put it in a coffin of sandalwood. Princess Jahanara had planned a state funeral, which was to include a procession with Shah Jahan's body carried by eminent nobles, followed by the notable citizens of Agra and officials scattering coins for the poor and needy. Aurangzeb refused to accommodate such ostentation. The body was taken to Taj Mahal and was interred there next to the body of his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal. Contributions to architecture. Shah Jahan left behind a grand legacy of structures constructed during his reign. He was one of the greatest patrons of Mughal architecture. His reign ushered in the golden age of Mughal architecture. His most famous building was Taj Mahal, which he built out of love for his wife, the Empress Mumtaz Mahal. His relationship with Mumtaz Mahal has been heavily adapted into Indian art, literature, and cinema. Shah Jahan personally owned the royal treasury and several precious stones such as the Kohinoor. Its structure was drawn with great care, and architects from all over the world were called for this purpose. The building took 20 years to complete and was constructed from white marble underlaid with brick. Upon his death, his son Aurangzeb had him interred in it next to Mumtaz Mahal. Among other constructions from his reign are the Red Fort, also called the Delhi Fort or Lal Killa in Urdu, large sections of Agra Fort, the Jama Masjid, the Wazir Khan Mosque, the Moti Masjid, the Shalimar Gardens, sections of the Lahore Fort, the Mahabat Khan Mosque in Peshawar, the Mini Qutub Minar in Hastatal, the Jahangir Mausoleum, his father's tomb, the construction of which was overseen by his stepmother Noor Jahan, and the Shah Jahan Mosque. He also had the Peacock Throne or Takht-e-Taus made to celebrate his rule. Shah Jahan also placed profound verses of Quran on his masterpieces of architecture. The Shah Jahan Mosque in Thatta, Sindh province of Pakistan, 100 kilometers or 60 miles from Karachi, was built during the reign of Shah Jahan in 1647. The mosque is built with red bricks with blue-colored glazed tiles, probably imported from another Sindh's town of Hala. The mosque has overall 93 domes, and it is the world's largest mosque having such a number of domes. It has been built keeping acoustics in mind. A person speaking inside one end of the dome can be heard at the other end when the speech exceeds 100 decibels. It has been on the tentative UNESCO World Heritage List since 1993.